Oh, I think we're
Okay, it's 9 o'clock. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'd like to call the Door County Board of Supervisors meeting to order on Tuesday, May 22nd at 9
It's kind
a.m.
of the same thing. Services, they had some.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
I always wanted to shout out.
Oh, there we go.
You gotta get the confirmed. Okay, we have 18 present, 3 excused. Presentation of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Gotta figure it out. Correspondence. In your packet, you'll see the unassigned fund balance. Anybody have any correspondence they would like to add? Next item, public comment. Anybody care to make a public comment in the audience?
Sure. I would just like to make a comment. I'd like to introduce Dan Kane. Dan, if you could maybe come on up. As you recall, we went through the process of reorganizing. We made a emergency management / communications director position. And Dan was our successful candidate. Very impressed with his background and experience. And I just wanted to introduce you today to Dan and let Dan maybe just say a few words so that we get a chance. You're going to be working with him quite a bit. So, Dan?
Sure. So, welcome. Thank you, guys. Dan Kane. I come from Green Bay. Like Ken said, I have an experience in emergency management from Brown County. I come from Brown County and working with them for a couple years. And after that, I worked in Appleton, doing some preparedness work with a consortium of 5 other health departments, doing preparedness work for them as well. I'm excited about this position because I think we all understand kind of the need for that position, especially in Door County. I know even when I'm not in Door County, if I go around the state, you talk about emergency management, you say the words emergency management, oftentimes you get a glazed look, even with places that have experienced departments in them. So I understand kind of where we are and where we want to be with this department. And I'm really excited to work with you guys on that. We've had a great couple weeks so far. Myself meeting with different people, department heads in different organizations within agencies within the county. Really great people. I've been really excited from what I've seen so far to work with these people. And then from the communications side, really have learned a lot in the first 3 weeks, understanding the backbone, the structure, how it works, and that kind of thing. So a lot of work to be done. I hope to work with you guys very closely on that and keep you guys up to date on what's going on. We'll work through this together as a group. If you guys have questions, please feel free. I've got business cards if you need them. My door is always open. My phone is always online. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. But otherwise, I'm happy to be here. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Welcome.
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 Approval of the minutes of the April 17th, 2018 regular meeting.
Move for approval.
Second.
Changes, additions, deletions, comments, other grammatical remarks or errors to be corrected. If not, by voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Before we move into our resolutions for the day, we are going to move down to item 12, the special report, Wisconsin Humane Society.
So yes, if both Allison and Dan are here from the Door County Humane Society, and we asked them to attend. Obviously, you heard in the past that there was a transition in terms of the ownership. I guess we'd like to introduce them, if you guys would like to come up. And they were just going to do a presentation just discussing how things have changed or remained the same, and also just discuss how the county is involved with the Humane Society and our relationship. So with that, Allison and Dan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Allison Clybourne, and I'm the Director of Animal Sheltering for the Wisconsin Humane Society. And this is Dan Miller. He's our on-the-ground shelter operations manager here in Door County and a new resident of Door County. He just moved here 2 weeks ago, still packing boxes. So yes, we acquired Door County Humane Society in January, and we are so grateful for the opportunity to serve Door County, its animals, and its people. Our experience has been delightful so far. We're just taking the opportunity the last few months to learn about this community, learn how we can serve this community, and continue the great work that has been done here. So right now, no significant changes. We are maintaining the status quo, and we're interested in meeting with each and every one of you to see how we can meet the needs of your community better. I myself have been with the Humane Society for 11 years. In my current role, I oversee all of our sheltering work across our 5 locations, and together we serve about 17,000 animals, wrapped into that animals that are served by the Door County campus as well. Dan, if you want to tell them a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I've been with the Wisconsin Humane Society for the past 10 years. Up until a few weeks ago, I was working out of our Milwaukee campus. But I'm up here to be the shelter operations manager, and so far I'm really enjoying being up here and all the people and animals that I've met so far.
Are there any questions that we can answer for you?
Maybe just one thing, just to ask Grant, maybe Grant, you can explain, since they're not as familiar with the agreements and stuff, but how do we work with the Humane Society in terms of the, just so everyone's on the same page?
And I'll do it from here because
Sure.
there's a lot of ties between Door County and the Humane Society, and this goes back during my entire tenure here. I've been here since 1997. Almost on a weekly basis, well, take a step back. The Humane Society has been designated in statutory designation as the county pound. That's an unfortunate term, but it's the term that's in the statute. And they have been acting in that capacity for at least a decade, if not longer. We also have the Humane Society inextricably intertwined with our rabies control program. As you may know or may not know, if a dog bites somebody and they're not up to date on their rabies shots, then they have to be put in isolation. The Door County Humane Society serves as the isolation facility for Door County. Also, in sort of a bigger picture view, when we have animal seizure cases like Rory Walters, where we're dealing with hundreds, sometimes even more animals, they are a resource, and what we have found in the past, and I think it's going to be even more significant, is the ties not only within Door County but outside of Door County, and the resources that the State Humane Society can bring to Door County will be a benefit to both the county and the Humane Society. We were talking before the county board meeting started. Our agreements, written agreements, have been allowed to lapse, and is too often the case sometimes on the peninsula. We've been operating on handshake and statutory authority, and what we hope to do in the next month or so is to get together with the folks from the Humane Society, our humane officers, law enforcement, district attorney's office, my office, and sit down and just have a roundtable discussion on what the status quo is and what we hope to be, and get some of the written contracts taken care of and in place again. So.
Cool. Thank you, Grant. I know Grant had the better background on that, so I just wanted him to cover that. Because of this one thing I'll just state is that obviously within our budget, we actually do make contributions to the Humane Society as part of our budget process, and I think Grant kind of explained why we do that. Again, there's some statutory requirements why we do that. So in anything, what we're trying to do is have them here today, obviously because there is a transition and there's been questions in regards to that relationship. And like we said, in the next, I don't believe next month, within the next few months, though, we will be bringing back those agreements, so that way you're kind of aware of why we're doing those agreements and how we're planning to work together with the Humane Society moving forward. So,
And just to add to that, it's really important to us to be the service provider for each and every one of you. And so we want to work with you on what that looks like. As Grant mentioned, we're excited to bring resource, but we're also excited to learn from the operations here and how we can better serve all of our communities. But we do have veterinary resource on staff as well as behavior resource that have already been helping animals and people in Door County, either by moving them to campuses where those people are based, or in many cases, we've been bringing animals up here because this facility has space for us, and finding animals homes through this community as well. But we're really excited to be here and serve you and your constituents.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you very much. Okay, back up to our agenda. First item, Resolution 2018-35, approval of gift, grant, and/or donation to Facilities and Parks Department. Mr. Osted.
Also move to pass Resolution 2018-35.
Is there a second?
Okay. I was waiting for that. As many of you know, whenever a donation comes before the county, if it's over $1,000, either money or in kind, it's got to come for full approval of the county board. In this case, the Sturgeon Bay Bass Open Tournament that just had their tournament this last weekend has donated $3,617.69 to Door County to put improvements on the Robert Carmody Park. And what it was is put stuff on the dock for handicap accessibility. And this has been in the works for at least a year, but it's now done and paid for. I think if I remember right, the county funded it with the promise that they were going to pay us back donations, and just to show you, they did pay back what they had promised us. So I think they paid for half of it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Nice. Questions? If not, we will go to the voter board. That has passed 18 yes, 3 absent. Thank you. Next item, 2018-36, the non-commercial hangar site lease agreements, rows number 14 and 15, Hikari number 16. Mr. Ninus.
I would like to make a motion for approval of 2018-36.
I'll second that.
For those that have been here a while, this is old hat. For you new ones, I'd like to say this is a standard procedure that we go through every time that we rent a hangar out at the airport with a term of 10 years. The specifics of the contracts are all in your packets if you care to look at them, but you'll find this is just a standard procedure. If you got any questions, well, we'll try to answer them.
Dan.
I'd like to correct John. They actually don't rent the hangar. They rent the land that the hangar is on, and they own their own hangar.
I stand corrected.
Of course, he's just a rookie on this committee, by the way.
It's nice to see the two new committees cooperating. Anything else? If not, we'll go to the voter board.
Not yet. Not yet. I can hear noise.
That's passed 18 yes. Thank you. Next item, 2018-37, Highway Department purchase of portable 400 kW generator for crushing operations. Mr. Ninus.
I would like to make a motion for approval of 2018-37.
Second.
This, if you want me to go through it, or if you want the finance, or, okay, well, what happened out at the highway plant was our generator went out, and we had to have one, so we rented one. And the money for this highway generator was in our budget actually for next year. But in order to get it this year, we have to do some changing with the finances and places where the money is put. In order to do that, we have to come to the county board because we can't make changes to the budget without coming to the county board. And by doing our research, we found that this was the best thing to do, is to buy a used generator, rent the one until we get a used one and get that in there, and then remove the money from one fund and put it to another fund without using any more taxpayer dollars. And that way we can keep our operations running. I guess that's kind of a quick and deal with it. If anybody wants any comments to it or questions, we'll try and answer them.
Any questions? Linda?
What did you say about renting? I mean, the resolution itself is to appropriate $98,000 for this used generator. Did you just mention a lease or a rent for?
Well, in order to get running, we had to get running for the operations to run. We got a blacktop. We can't. So we rented a machine. I rented a generator to get us running. And then we went out for bids on what we should do to replace the one we got. And in reality, the people that rented the machine to us, which is over $8,000 a month, give us half price if we accepted their bid on this used machine. So we took the used machine rather than the new one, and we'll just work the funds without causing any more taxpayer dollars.
Is this one going to last 30 years as well?
Pardon me?
Will this one last 30 years as well? That's a long time for a generator.
We can only hope. It is the used one. I think it's a 206 or 208.
6.
So we can only hope. Nobody knows for sure. To put more money into a used one again, we just a few years ago stuck 10 big ones into that one already, and we didn't figure that was the way to go.
Anybody else? Kathy?
I just wanted to say this then came to the Finance Committee, which approved unanimously.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, we will go to the voter board.
Where this thing goes.
That has passed 18 yes, 3 absent. Excuse me, 3 absent. Next, 2018-38, appointment to committees, commissions, and boards. This is for the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Could I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt that.
Second.
2018-38.
Would you like to explain?
Sure. So just as David kind of mentioned, if you're familiar, we track all of our appointments, and Mariah is here. But for our zoning board of adjustment, we do have some terms that are, I guess, expiring, coming up, and Mariah worked with the members of the committee to find out who would be willing to serve. And those, again, are provided on page 27 of your packet. It also describes their background in terms of their experience. And again, you'll actually see on the exhibit as well, you'll actually see their terms of how they're serving. So you can see, for example, John's renewed appointment, Monica's appointment as a regular member, and Lars is going to be moving to first alternate. So if there's any specific questions, I'm going to defer to Mariah.
Dan?
I think someone should say thank you to Lars Johnson for serving on it something like 35 years. In my opinion, that's one of the hardest committees in the county to serve on, because you got to make a yes or no, and half the crowd will like you and the other half will hate you.
Definitely. Mariah?
Oh, I was just going to see if anybody had questions.
I think John.
And Dan's correct. So Lars has been on since 1984. He's now shifting to an alternate, but I think once he leaves, he'd actually like to leave in a year, even though we're reappointing him for 2 years. But yeah, I think a party will be warranted.
Definitely. John, did you have a question? No? Right. We can do it both ways. So by voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried, thank you. Moving to the ordinances. Report comprehensive zoning ordinance text amendment. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the report to the Door County Board of Supervisors for the text amendment ordinance pertaining to 2018-10.
Second.
And Mariah is here I could stumble through and give an explanation, but she can do it much more succinctly than I can, so I'll let her take it from here.
All right. The easiest thing to do is just to look at page 28 in your packet. This is part of the report because that explains exactly what these several pages of amendments are doing. The first thing is that I'm sure you're all familiar with a traditional land division where you divide up your land. You've got pieces or a piece of paper that shows, your checkerboard box of the lots. But we also have another process that's called site condominium land divisions. Those basically look the same, but it's a condominium form of ownership. So somebody is purchasing the right to use a parcel of land under condominium ownership rather than the more traditional style. We have a section in our ordinance, in the zoning ordinance, that doesn't allow those so-called site condominium land units to be treated the same way as a regular lot. So the one set of amendments would treat those site condominium units the same as those regular lots. The second amendment is really a cleanup amendment. It has to do with our secondary dwelling units. Those are smaller residential units that are in conjunction with a single-family home. And the interpretation of the ordinance, since we've allowed those types of units, is that they're subject to the regular 75-foot water setback. That actually is not explicitly written into the ordinance right now, so this amendment would explicitly put that in there. The third amendment has to do with our conservation subdivisions. Conservation subdivisions are where, rather than doing what people might call a regular cookie cutter subdivision, you create smaller lots that are typically clustered together, and you're allowed to do more of them than you would be able to do under a regular subdivision. But in exchange, you have to designate a certain amount of the rest of the property as permanent open space or agriculture or a park or some sort of non-developed use. One of the things that we've been running into in recent years when people want to create conservation subdivisions is with the smaller lots that people want to create, a lot of them have like a farmhouse and farm buildings, and they want to partition that off and then have the farmland remain as the open space. The way the ordinance is written right now, you could do that, but you're not allowed to use those outbuildings for any agricultural purposes. So it's preventing some farmers from taking advantage of this development option. So those set of amendments would allow agricultural uses on those smaller lots, and it would allow what we refer to as private riding stables, which really just means that you own your own personal horse as opposed to a riding stable where members of the public can come and ride. And then the fourth set of amendments are related to nonconforming uses. So Door County, for a number of years, has not really had any cap whatsoever on the expansion of a nonconforming use. A nonconforming use is one where it was legal when it was established, and the rules have since changed, and so if somebody wanted to put that use on that lot today, they wouldn't be allowed to. It's typically what is referred to as grandfathering. So nonconforming uses are things that were legal when they were established, and then now they're considered grandfathered. We have not had a cap on how large those nonconforming uses can get. We've just run them through a conditional use permit process at the Resource Planning Committee to have a hearing to talk about the proposed expansion. But given the change in the state law this past year with regard to the county basically almost in a lot of cases being forced to issue conditional use permits, we thought it wise to put an actual cap on how large those nonconforming uses can get. I looked at 30 other counties' ordinances, and we are one of maybe 2 or 3 that don't have any kind of a cap. Everybody else either says absolutely no expansion or relatively small expansion. So what we've proposed in these amendments is that there would be a lifetime cap of 10% of the expansion of those nonconforming uses. They also, of course, would have the option to petition to rezone that property down the road if they wanted to as well, so that the use could become a conforming use rather than a non-conforming use. So that's basically everything that you find on pages, what does that go through? 30 through, yep, I guess just 30 and 31. That's what all of those do. Does anybody have questions about any of those?
Thanks, Mariah.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we will be accepting the report on a voice vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next would be the 2018-10 Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance Text Amendment Ordinance. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion we adopt the amendatory zoning ordinance 2018-10.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion or question? If not, since it's an ordinance, we'll go to the voter board. That has passed, 18 yes. Next, on report, comprehensive zoning ordinance text amendment. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion we accept the report to the Door County Board of Supervisors, the text amendment for a mandatory zoning ordinance 2018-11.
I'll second that.
And again, I'll let Mariah explain it.
All right. We separated this one out so that you'd have two separate reports and ordinances because, as you probably noticed as you went through the packet, the Resource Planning Committee is proposing a slightly modified version of this ordinance. So that means that this one won't go into effect as quickly as the ones that you just passed. So these are kind of intertwined issues, and if you look at page 32, which is the report to you, that basically explains what these amendments do. So we have a use currently in the ordinance that's called farm market. That's different than like a farmer's market where the towns have people come on a Tuesday or a Saturday or a Wednesday. This isn't about that. These are about individual properties that are called farm market. And under the zoning ordinance, those have always been required to contain and display and sell mostly raw produce. So almost no one has ever been authorized as one of these. I think we counted and we found 4 or 5 in the county that have been authorized as farm markets because that's not what people want to sell and what you have easy access to in Door County. So most of the places in Door County that call themselves farm markets are authorized as retail. We just consider them retail stores because they're in a zoning ordinance district that allows for retail. So what these uses propose to do is to actually eliminate that use that's called farm market, and any of the places that are out there would already be grandfathered. And as I've said, many that call themselves farm markets are actually just retail. For those that do want to consider or sell raw produce, we're proposing some amendments to roadside stands. That's another option that people have for selling their farm products. These amendments would allow you to have a larger roadside stand than you're allowed to have currently, and to not be restricted to selling products that are just from that property. Right now, roadside stands, you're limited to less than 200 square feet for any structures that you're going to put up, and you can only sell things that are from that immediate property. This would allow you to go up to 400 square feet and to sell produce that's at least in part from your property, but you could band together with your neighbors if you wanted to and have one larger stand. We also, I just want to point out, and it's an italicized text here, that we are still allowing via either the home occupation or the home business land use option the opportunity for anybody that lives on a property to sell whatever processed products they might want to if they get correctly authorized. So if they want to be selling jams and salsas or pies or bread or things like that that aren't considered raw farm products, they can do that via those two options. And then third, these amendments would disallow retail sales and tasting rooms for breweries, wineries, fruit, vegetable, or cheese processing facilities that are in the non-commercial zoning districts. We've always interpreted the ordinance as disallowing retail and sales or tasting for fruit and vegetable cheese processing facilities in those non-commercial districts. We have authorized 2 of those types of uses for wineries and breweries, but we looked back at the ordinance earlier versions of the ordinance this past year and have realized that we think that the interpretation for those outlying zoning districts was probably for wineries and breweries to be production only. Because really, if you're allowing a tasting room or retail sales of that product out in an agricultural area, you're essentially allowing a bar or a retail store out in a district where neighbors and surrounding property owners have been assuming that they're going to be living in an area that's more rural in nature. And anything that's been previously authorized under any of these uses that is in existence would be grandfathered. Like I said, I think there's only 2 wineries that would be affected, and as far as the farm markets, we counted a couple, and most of them are already aware of these proposals. So that is what those accomplish, and those actual text amendments start on page 34 of your packet and go through page 40. Does anybody have questions about any of those?
Just a clarification. So under this text amendment change, the existing businesses that are in 1, 2, and 3 are existing uses become, quote, non-conforming
Correct.
for future purpose. So they would then fall under the one that we just previously approved as far as any expansion.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, they'd be capped at whatever they're at today, then they'd be capped at that 10% unless they rezoned to become a conforming use.
Linda?
I had talked to Mariah on this, and she answered most of my questions, but I forgot to, was there a demand that the size of the roadside stands be increased, and were there requests that they be allowed to sell product that was not produced on that property? I mean, how did that come about?
We've had several people over the years that have balked at it's 192 square feet that you're allowed right now, which is pretty small if you're putting up a roadside stand. Because typically what people are doing, I shouldn't say typically, often what people are doing is rather than building a standalone structure that they're going to have as their roadside stand, they might be using part of their barn. So maybe they put, a cooler inside part of their barn. And we've had them, kind of either partition off or literally line off what area is going to be considered for the roadside stand. So there has been some demand for that to be larger. And we thought that that would be a good allowance since the farm market use is going to be discontinued to offer at least a larger roadside stand option. As far as whether or not people want to sell things from other property, yes. And we've kind of turned a blind eye over the years. If you own 12 different parcels and you're growing, whatever it is, the fruits and vegetables that you're growing on those 12 different parcels, and we've authorized a roadside stand for you, technically all we can let you do is sell things that are from that exact property that the roadside stand is on. We've never worried about it. If, you own the parcels that are growing, all the strawberries or whatever it is, we've just not worried about it. But this would allow us to officially not have to worry about that, and for you and your neighbors to potentially just have one roadside stand that you would run together.
And are roadside stands allowed in every zoning district?
They're allowed in all agricultural zoning districts, which I didn't bring my ordinance down, but I could look at the chart.
So they're not allowed in residential?
They're not allowed in, are you leading into the other topic that we talked about? Okay. Yeah, they're not allowed in residential districts. The topic that Supervisor Wade is talking about, which did come up as a separate topic when I talked with a number of town officials about these amendments, are what seem to be apparently the growing stands where people are selling firewood by the side of the road, which I did not realize a lot of that apparently is coming in from out of the county. We've just always kind of assumed that people have been, chopping down trees on their back 40 or on other property that they own and then selling the wood, but it does seem to be, I guess, like there's a more kind of permanent business component to that moving in, so that's something that we're going to have to take a look at. We wouldn't have typically authorized those under roadside stand because I don't know that we would have considered wood a farm product, but we'll have to take a look at that.
Anybody else? If not, we will vote on the acceptance of the report by voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Ordinance 2018-11, comprehensive zoning ordinance text amendment. Mr. Fisher.
I would make a motion that we adopt amendatory zoning ordinance 2018-11.
I'll second that.
Any discussion or other questions that have come up in the last few seconds? If not, we will go to the voter board. That has passed 17 yes, 1 no. Next ordinance, 2018-12, amendment of Chapter 11.05, Door County Code, all-terrain vehicles and utility terrain vehicle routes. Mr. Ninus.
I'll make a motion for approval of 2018-12.
Second.
The town of Bailey's Harbor came before the, I gotta say, Airport and Highway Committee now, so I get it right. And asked to have this approved to be put on with the rest of the roads that we have designated. The committee reviewed it, and we didn't find anything outstanding that would be a real safety hazard. So we're recommending approve it and have it added to the rest of the list that we have in Door County.
Questions? Other comments? If not, we will go to the voter board for the ordinance. That has passed on the vote to 18 yes, 0 no. Ordinance 2018-13, amendment of 340.002 Door County Code. Mr. Ninus.
Today must be my day. I motion for approval of 2018-13.
Second.
When the new fire station was built for the bug down in Brussels, and the EMS building was also put with the building, the road in front of there had a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. And we've been asked by the town and by the bug and by EMS if we could lower that for 45, it would be less dangerous, they figured, coming out to emergency vehicles. And we thought that was a good idea. That's why we're recommending approval of this.
Any questions? If not, we will go to the voter board. That is passed on the vote 18 yes, 0 no. Thank you. New business, none. Oral committee reports. Anybody want to make an oral committee report? Would anybody like to review any other committee minutes? Any discussion on vouchers, claims, and bills? Our next regular county board meeting will be June 26, 2018 at 9 a.m.
Mr. Chair, one question for you.
John?
I spoke to you earlier, and I spoke with Ken Povic much earlier regarding the grand opening or a private opening session of the new facility at the Bug Fire Station / EMS station. I don't know if you wanted to mention anything today about that, or do you want to have further discussion on that?
We could have that discussion right now if you'd like. The question is, would we like to have a separate private county board tour and look at
The building.
the building, or do you want to do it in conjunction with the public open house?
The public grand opening is expected to be June 24th. I don't have a time yet, but that would generate an opportunity to commingle, I guess, with constituents, either down in that area or other visitors that come aboard. That Ken and I kind of agreed that would be a good option. However, if the board feels they want a private viewing or showing, we can do that also.
I think the 24th sounds good. Mr. Public? Great.
We'll look forward for the 24th then. And I'll let everybody know what time
Okay.
that would be.
Super, thank you. Meeting per diem code 522.
That being said, Mr. Chairman, if there's no further business to be transacted, I'd like to make a motion we adjourn.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone.